The distress signal had been repeating for 19 years. Not continuously, not loudly, just a quiet pulse hidden beneath cosmic background radiation at the edge of charted space. So weak most civilizations assumed it was a dying star releasing electromagnetic noise into the void. But Commander Vael, the Dominion Recon Fleet, had always trusted patterns more than assumptions. Patterns did not lie. Patterns revealed truth. And this signal was repeating too perfectly to be natural. His scout vessel drifted silently beyond the Purse's boundary, a region so empty even pirates avoided it. No trade lanes, no colonies, no strategic value. Only darkness and dead systems forgotten by the galaxy thousands of years ago. Vael stood alone on the command platform while pale blue light flickered across his silver uniform. The signal echoed through the bridge speakers again. 3 short pulses, 2 long, 3 short, then silence. His tactical officer tilted her head, still transmitting on the same interval. Vael narrowed his eyes, translated again. "We already have, Commander." "Do it." The officer sighed softly and activated the linguistic matrix. Ancient audio crackled through the chamber, distorted by time and radiation. Then a voice emerged from the static. "Calm. Human. If anyone hears this, don't come looking for us." The bridge fell silent. Even the engine hum suddenly felt distant. Vael slowly turned toward the speaker. "Play the rest." The message resumed. "This is the exploration vessel Horizon. We have confirmed the structure is active. Repeat, the structure is active. It is not abandoned. It learns. God help us, it learns." Static swallowed the transmission. Then screaming. Then silence. The recording ended. Several officers shifted uncomfortably. Lieutenant Sarek forced a laugh. Primitive species always sound dramatic in distress calls. But Vael did not respond. His eyes remained fixed on the waveforms frozen in the air before him. Humans! The file archives described them as an extinct pre-spaceflight civilization from a forgotten yellow star system near the Orion Arm. According to Dominion records, humanity destroyed itself during early industrial expansion over 12,000 years ago. Primitive, violent, short-lived, irrelevant. At least that was the official history. Vael walked toward the observation glass. Beyond it, the blackness of space stretched infinitely in every direction. Somewhere out there, a human ship had transmitted a distress signal using technology the Dominion claimed humanity never possessed, which meant one of two things. Either the archives were wrong, or someone had rewritten them. "Commander," the navigation officer whispered carefully, "there's more." A holographic projection appeared over the center platform. The entire bridge froze. Something enormous drifted in the darkness ahead of them. At first glance, it resembled debris orbiting a dead moon, but as the scanner sharpened, details emerged. Massive curved structures, rotating sections, towers, heat signatures, lights, thousands of lights. Vael stepped closer. No! The object was artificial. Not a station, not a ship, a city. An ancient city floating in deep space far beyond known civilization. The structure stretched over 30 kilometers from end to end, scarred by age and meteor impacts. Entire sections were dark and lifeless, but other parts still glowed faintly with power. And painted across its outer hull, barely visible beneath centuries of damage, were words written in ancient human text. "Welcome home." Lieutenant Sarek stared in disbelief. "Impossible." The science officer's hands trembled over her console. "Commander," life scans are active. Vael's expression hardened. "How many?" The officer swallowed. "Approximately 1 million. Every person on the bridge turned toward her. "That cannot be correct," Sarek snapped. "Humanity has been extinct for 12,000 years. "I know what the scans say." Vael felt something cold crawl up his spine. 1 million life signs. Inside a drifting city that should not exist. A civilization officially declared dead before the Dominion itself had reached the stars. Then the city moved. Not physically. Emotionally. The lights changed. Entire sectors illuminated one after another like something awakening from sleep. Ancient windows flickered alive across the colossal structure. Long, dormant engines began glowing deep beneath the hull. and suddenly every screen on the bridge turned black. Alarm sirens erupted instantly. Hacking intrusion detected. Commander, something just bypassed military encryption. That's impossible. A symbol appeared on every display, a blue sphere, surrounded by stars. Then text emerged beneath it. Welcome back, humanity. The bridge went silent. Slowly, another line appeared. Unidentified alien vessel detected. For the first time in 300 years of service, Commander Vael felt genuine fear, because whatever had just spoken to them believed humans were still alive. The city was watching them. Commander Vael felt it now in every flicker of light crawling across the ancient structure ahead. The massive station no longer looked abandoned. It looked aware. Every sensor aboard the Dominion Scout vessel began malfunctioning simultaneously. Thermal scans looped endlessly. Navigation markers shifted by several meters every few seconds. Even the ship's internal clock started losing synchronization. Lieutenant Sarek gripped his console tightly. Commander, something inside that structure is inside our systems. Vail's voice remained calm, but only barely. Can you remove it? No. That single word sent a ripple of unease across the bridge. Dominion military encryption was considered unbreakable. Entire wars had been won because enemy civilizations could not penetrate Dominion systems. Yet, whatever intelligence controlled the human megastructure had entered their network effortlessly. The screens flickered again. New text appeared. Do not be afraid. That did not help. Several officers instinctively reached for sidearms, even though they were orbiting 30 kilometers away from the station. Vael stepped forward slowly. Open a communication channel. Commander, that was not a request. The bridge officers exchanged nervous glances before the transmission array activated. Static crackled softly. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice answered. Warm, calm, human. It has been a very long time since we heard another living voice. The bridge froze. Not synthetic, not distorted. A real voice. An elderly woman, by the sound of it. Vael straightened. Identify yourself. There was a brief pause. Caretaker Elena Merrow. Civilian authority representative of the Horizon Arc Initiative. The translator struggled briefly with the ancient dialect. Arc. Vael recognized the term from extinct human mythology archives. A vessel meant to preserve life during catastrophe. His eyes narrowed slightly. According to Dominion records, humanity has been extinct for 12,000 years. Soft laughter echoed through the speakers. Not mocking. Tired. Then your records are very wrong. Every officer on the bridge looked toward Vael, because if humanity survived, then the Dominion had either made the greatest intelligence failure in galactic history, or someone intentionally erased an entire civilization. Vael folded his hands behind his back. You're claiming 1 million humans survived undetected for over 10 millennia? Not survived, Elena corrected gently. Endured. The lights across the giant structure brightened slowly as she spoke. Through the observation glass, Vael could now see enormous interior districts behind transparent alloy domes. Forests. Actual forests. Rivers reflecting artificial sunlight. Entire neighborhoods built beneath massive rotating habitats. Children running through parks. People gathering in open plazas. The bridge officers stared in stunned silence. It was not a military station. It was a world. Sarek whispered under his breath. How is this possible? The Dominion had master-efficient starship engineering thousands of years ago. Every vessel was optimized for resource conservation, tactical mobility, and military superiority. No wasted space. No unnecessary comforts. No aesthetics. This human construct violated every known principle of intelligent design. And yet, it felt alive in a way Dominion ships never had. Vael noticed something unsettling. The humans visible inside the habitat were smiling, talking, laughing. Not one looked stressed. Not one looked afraid. These people had supposedly spent thousands of years isolated in deep space beyond civilization itself. They should have collapsed generations ago. Civil disorder alone should have destroyed them, but instead, they had built paradise in the void. Elena Merrow. Vael said carefully, "How did your species survive this long?" Silence lingered briefly. Then the old woman answered softly, "Because we stopped building ships." Vael frowned. "Explain." "The galaxy builds machines people can survive inside. Humanity built places worth living inside." Several officers exchanged confused looks. The statement sounded irrational, even philosophical, not scientific. But before Vael could respond, alarm suddenly erupted across the bridge. "Commander!" A tactical display exploded into existence. Hyperspace ruptures. Dozens of them. Large ones. Sarek's face went pale. Dominion war signatures. Vael turned sharply toward the screen. 32 military vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel around the perimeter of the system. Black armored hulls reflected cold starlight as weapons arrays activated immediately. At the center of the fleet appeared a massive dreadnought, nearly 4 kilometers long. The flagship of Fleet Admiral Corvin. Vael's stomach tightened instantly. Corvin was not here for diplomacy. The comm systems activated automatically. The Admiral's cold voice filled the bridge. "Commander Vael, step away from the human structure immediately." Vael stiffened. "Sir, we have confirmed surviving human civilians aboard the station. You have confirmed a Class 12 unknown intelligence capable of infiltrating Dominion military systems." The massive dreadnought rotated slowly toward the city, weapons charging. Elena's voice returned quietly over the channel. There was sadness in her tone now. "So begins again." Vael felt genuine dread for the first time, because the old woman did not sound surprised. She sounded disappointed. The Dominion fleet surrounded the human ark like predators closing around wounded prey. 32 warships formed a perfect containment sphere around the ancient structure, while thousands of targeting systems locked onto its surface. Red firing markers covered the massive city from end to end. Yet the humans did not react. No defensive formations. No panic. No weapons powering up. Inside the great habitat domes, life continued normally. Children still played beneath artificial sunlight. Citizens still walked through markets and gardens as if an invasion fleet had not just arrived outside their world. Fleet Admiral Corvin appeared on every bridge screen across the task force. Tall, severe, emotionless. The old warrior wore the black ceremonial armor of the Dominion High Fleet, its polished surface marked with silver victory lines earned over 2 centuries of warfare. He looked at the human ark the way a surgeon looked at infected tissue. "Attention, unidentified human survivors," Corvin announced coldly. "By authority of the Dominion Council, your structure is now under military quarantine pending threat assessment." No answer came immediately. Vael watched carefully from his smaller scout vessel. Something about the silence felt deliberate. Then Elena finally responded. "Threat assessment?" Her calm voice carried faint amusement now. "Young man, we have children growing tomatoes." Several bridge officers looked confused. Corvin did not. His expression darkened further. "You possess technology capable of penetrating Dominion military systems. You exist outside all known galactic records. And your station contains an artificial intelligence powerful enough to bypass fleet encryption." A pause. "That makes you dangerous." Elena sighed softly over the channel. "No, fear makes us dangerous." The Admiral ignored the statement. "Transmit your military capabilities immediately." This time the silence lasted longer. When Elena spoke again, her voice sounded almost tired. "You still think like empire builders." Corvin's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself." "You arrived with weapons before questions. You saw survivors and searched for threats. You looked at a home and saw a target." A few younger officers aboard Vael's ship shifted uncomfortably, because she was right. The Dominion had not asked if humanity needed help. They had asked how dangerous humanity might be. Corvin folded his hands behind his back. "History has proven caution necessary. Civilization survived through strength." "No," Elena answered gently. "Civilization survived through people caring whether tomorrow is worth reaching." The bridge fell silent again. Sarek leaned toward Vael and whispered quietly, "Commander, she talks like a philosopher, not a leader." Vael kept his eyes fixed on the ark. "No," he murmured. She talks like someone who has already seen civilizations die. That unsettled him more than anything else. Fleet Admiral Corvin finally gave the order, deploy boarding probes. Instantly, dozens of armored drones launched from Dominion warships and accelerated toward the Ark. Vael felt his stomach tighten. "Elena," he warned quietly, "do not resist. The Admiral fears what he does not understand." Her answer came almost sadly. "That has always been a problem." The probes reached the outer hull. Then every single one shut down simultaneously. No explosions, no weapons fire. They simply died. Thousands of lights across the drones blinked out at once before the machines drifted harmlessly into space. The entire Dominion fleet went silent. Corvin's expression hardened. "What did you do?" "Nothing violent," Elena replied calmly. "Your machines were simply told to sleep." Impossible. Dominion technology operated through isolated quantum systems specifically designed to prevent remote interference. Yet the humans disabled military hardware more effortlessly than turning off lights. Across the fleet, nervous whispers spread instantly. Vael noticed something else. The humans still had not threatened them. Not once. That frightened him more than open hostility would have. Because genuinely dangerous civilizations rarely needed to posture. Corvin activated a secure fleet-wide channel. All commanders prepare for containment escalation. Vael stepped forward immediately. "Admiral, wait. We do not yet understand what we're dealing with." Corvin rounded on him sharply. "And that is precisely why caution is necessary." The Admiral gestured toward the human Ark. "Look at that thing. 30 kilometers of undocumented human engineering hidden beyond our borders for thousands of years. Artificial ecosystems, advanced AI, unknown technological capability." His voice became colder. "No species survives in secret for 10,000 years without becoming something dangerous." Elena answered quietly before Vael could. "Or desperate." That single word changed the atmosphere instantly. For the first time, Vael heard exhaustion beneath her calmness. Not fear, not aggression, weariness. The exhaustion of people who have been running for a very long time. But Corvin either did not notice or did not care. Dominion intelligence concluded humanity destroyed itself during its industrial era. "Yes," Elena replied softly. "Almost." Silence spread across every ship in the fleet. Vael frowned slightly. "Almost." Another long pause. Then the ancient woman finally said the words that made the entire bridge go cold. "We did not build a Horizon Ark to escape extinction." The station lights dimmed slightly around the colossal structure, like a living thing remembering pain. "We built it because something found Earth first." No one spoke. Across 32 Dominion warships, thousands of officers stared silently at their screens while the ancient human Ark drifted beneath them like a sleeping god. Fleet Admiral Corvin's expression remained rigid, but Vael noticed a subtle tightening around the old commander's eyes. Fear, tiny, controlled, but real. What found Earth? Corvin demanded. The answer did not come immediately. Instead, the massive structure beneath them shifted again. Sections of the outer hull rotated slowly, exposing gigantic transparent layers buried beneath armored plating. Vael's breath caught. Cities, not survival bunkers, not emergency shelters. Cities, entire human civilizations preserved inside the Ark. Vast residential districts stretched beneath artificial skies, glowing warm orange like an eternal sunset. Lakes reflected shimmering lights from distant towers. Forests moved gently in simulated wind. And everywhere, people, living normal lives. Some were eating together at outdoor tables. Others walked through parks lined with trees. Children chased each other through open plazas, while music drifted faintly through the Ark's internal atmosphere. The Dominion officers could only stare, because none of it made sense. Dominion survival doctrine was built on efficiency. If a species faced extinction, it minimized resource consumption, population limits, controlled nutrition, restricted emotional indulgence, survival through discipline. But the humans had done the opposite. They had preserved beauty. Vael found himself staring at one particular district, where an elderly man played an instrument beside a fountain, while dozens of humans gathered nearby simply to listen. No productivity, no tactical purpose, no efficiency, and yet the atmosphere inside the Ark felt more alive than anything Vael had experienced in centuries of military service. Elena's voice returned quietly. "You want to know why we survived?" The old woman sounded distant now, like someone remembering another life. "Then you must first understand why everyone else died." Fleet Admiral Corvin crossed his arms. "Explain." A holographic transmission suddenly appeared across every Dominion bridge. Ancient human recordings. Earth, blue oceans, cloud-covered continents, crowded cities glowing beneath night skies. The footage looked impossibly peaceful. Then the sky opened. Massive black objects descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling moons. Entire cities vanished beneath white fire. Oceans boiled. Shock waves rolled across continents. Several Dominion officers recoiled instinctively. Even Corvin's expression darkened. "These recordings are authentic?" he asked sharply. Vael's science officer answered immediately. "Yes, Admiral. No signs of fabrication." The footage continued. Human ships launched desperately into orbit against overwhelming alien constructs thousands of times larger. Primitive weapons impacted enemy hulls harmlessly before entire fleets vanished in seconds. Humanity had not destroyed itself. Humanity had been hunted. Elena spoke softly over the devastation. "We were not special. We were not advanced. We were barely beginning to reach beyond our planet. A city disappeared beneath orbital fire. But we were allowed." The transmission shifted to old human broadcasts. Music, television, deep space radio transmissions spreading endlessly into the cosmos. Signals. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy without realizing who might be listening. The Dominion calls them the Silence. Vael frowned immediately. The Silence. That name existed only in forbidden military archives. Ancient rumors. Unverified extinction events. Dead civilizations found abandoned without explanation. Most officers believed the stories were myths used to justify defense spending. Corvin's face hardened instantly. "Enough." Elena ignored him. "Your people know about them, Admiral. Every old civilization does. That's why your borders are so controlled. That's why your species fear unexplored space." The human woman's voice grew quieter. "You survive by staying small, quiet, hidden." No one denied it, because she was right. The Dominion had spent thousands of years avoiding deep space expansion beyond secure territory. Exploration existed, but cautiously, carefully. Fear had shaped galactic civilization for millennia, but humanity had apparently encountered the nightmare directly. Vael stepped closer to the screen. "How did you escape?" For the first time since contact began, Elena hesitated. Then the image changed again. A shipyard. Massive. Chaotic. Thousands of unfinished vessels surrounding an enormous skeletal framework in orbit above a dying Earth. The Horizon Arc. But incomplete. "We didn't," Elena whispered. The next footage showed panic. Millions of humans flooding evacuation zones. Families separated. Cities collapsing. Military forces buying time against impossible odds. Vael watched human soldiers fighting battles they knew they could not win simply to delay the enemy a few more hours. Not for victory, for evacuation, for survival. The recordings became harder to watch. Yet the humans aboard the Ark had preserved all of it. Every failure, every death, every sacrifice. Not hidden, remembered. Elena continued quietly. The Horizon Project was never meant to save all of humanity. A final launch sequence appeared, the colossal Ark igniting unfinished engines while Earth burned beneath it, only enough to keep the species alive. The Ark fled into darkness while countless humans remained behind on the dying planet. Vael noticed something then. The Dominion officers around him looked shaken, not because humanity lost, but because humans had chosen to remember it. Dominion history erased weakness. Failure was archived, buried, forgotten, but the humans carried their scars openly, like the memories mattered more than pride. Corvin's voice cut through the silence sharply. If the silence destroyed Earth, how are you still alive? That question changed everything, because for the first time since contact began, Elena sounded afraid, not of the Dominion, of memory itself, because eventually the lights throughout the Ark dimmed slightly. They stopped chasing us. The silence after Elena's words felt heavier than gravity. Across the Dominion fleet, officers exchanged uneasy glances, while ancient fears resurfaced from the darkest corners of classified history, because every major civilization knew the legends. Dead colonies, vanished species, entire systems suddenly going silent. No survivors, no wreckage, only absence, the silence. Most citizens believed those stories were myths designed to justify military expansion and border control. But the fear behind those myths had always been real, and now a surviving human civilization was calmly claiming they had escaped them. Fleet Admiral Corvin straightened slowly, his expression hardened again, retreating behind military discipline. "Convenient story," he said coldly. Vael turned toward him in disbelief. "Admiral." Corvin silenced him with a raised hand. "For 10,000 years, the Dominion have protected this galaxy through vigilance and order. And now an undocumented civilization appears from deep space, claiming ancient monsters destroyed their homeworld." His eyes narrowed at the human arc. "You expect us to simply believe this?" Elena answered calmly. "No." The response seemed to irritate Corvin even more. "You possess technology beyond Dominion standards. You infiltrated military systems effortlessly, and somehow your people survived where entire civilizations vanished." He stepped closer to the holographic display. "From our perspective, humanity itself may be the threat." Several officers visibly stiffened at the accusation. Vael felt anger rise in his chest, not because Corvin was being cautious, but because the Admiral was refusing to listen. The humans had shown them cities, families, children, and the Dominion response had been suspicion. Elena remained quiet for several seconds before answering. "You still think survival is proof of superiority?" Corvin's jaw tightened. "It usually is." The old woman sighed softly. "No, Admiral. Sometimes survival only proves someone suffered longer." That line hit the bridge harder than any weapon could have. Vael noticed younger officers lowering their eyes, because deep down, they understood. The Dominion survived through fear, through control, through emotional suppression in the name of stability. But these humans had endured unimaginable loss and somehow still built gardens, music halls, parks, and homes among the stars. The contrast was becoming impossible to ignore. Then another voice suddenly entered the channel. Sharp, female, young, grandmother. Stop trying to explain. A new human appeared on the main display. Vael blinked in surprise. Unlike Elena's gentle appearance, this woman looked like a storm barely held together by discipline. Dark military uniform, short black hair streaked silver near one side. A scar crossed the bridge of her nose. But her eyes were the unsettling part. Focused, cold, tired, like someone born after the apocalypse. "This conversation is pointless," she said flatly. "They already decided what we are." Corvin frowned. "Identify yourself." "Commander Mirachun, Defense Coordinator for Horizon Arkansas." Defense Coordinator. Military. The atmosphere changed instantly. Several Dominion weapons systems activated automatically. Mira noticed and smiled faintly, not nervous, amused. That's usually the point where other civilizations threaten us. Corvin folded his hands behind his back. "Perhaps because you behave suspiciously." Mira tilted her head slightly. "Because we survived?" "No," Corvin answered sharply. "Because no species survives the silence." That sentence echoed through the bridge. Vael realized then what Corvin truly feared. Not invasion, not attack, contamination. If humanity disproved Dominion doctrine, if fear and suppression were not the only path to survival, then thousands of years of galactic philosophy collapsed instantly. Mira seemed to understand that too. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You think strength kept your civilization alive." Corvin remained silent. The human commander looked directly into the camera. Then let us show you the difference between surviving and enduring. Before anyone could respond, the entire human arc suddenly illuminated. Millions of lights awakened simultaneously across the colossal structure. Vast outer sections rotated apart, revealing gigantic internal chambers hidden beneath armored layers. Vael stared in disbelief. Shipyards. Hundreds of vessels rested inside the ark. Not warships. Something stranger. Every single one looked different. Some were sleek and elegant. Others looked rugged and heavily repaired. Several carried painted artwork across their hulls. One ship appeared covered in handwritten messages. Another had entire observation decks built into its spine. None of them followed standardized military symmetry. And yet every vessel radiated quiet purpose. Dominion officers immediately began whispering. Impossible. No unified engineering, doctrine. How do they maintain fleet cohesion? Corvin's face darkened further. Chaotic construction. Mira almost laughed. No, Admiral. Her voice sharpened slightly. Individuality. The central vessel slowly drifted forward from the Ark's massive interior docks. It was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers long. Its outer hull carried visible scars from ancient battles, but instead of replacing damaged plating with uniform materials, the humans had preserved the repairs openly. Different armor colors stretched across the vessel, like a history written in steel. And painted across the bow in massive white letters were the words, "We remember Earth." The entire Dominion fleet fell silent, because no galactic military vessel displayed emotion openly. Ships were tools, weapons, machines, but this ship felt personal, alive. Myra's calm voice filled every bridge. You think humanity survived because we became stronger than fear. The vessel's engines ignited softly. Warm golden light reflected across the surrounding fleet. You are wrong. Vael felt chills run through him, because for the first time since first contact, he realized the humans were not trying to impress them. They were trying to warn them. The human vessel moved without formation escorts. That alone unsettled the Dominion fleet. Military doctrine across known space was absolute. Valuable ships never traveled alone. Protection layers, defensive screens, tactical symmetry. Every maneuver calculated for maximum survival probability. But the human ship simply drifted forward calmly into the center of 32 armed warships like it had nothing to fear. Its engines emitted no aggressive signatures. No weapon systems charged. No shields activated. And yet, every Dominion officer aboard the fleet felt the same growing tension. The vessel was not behaving like prey. Fleet Admiral Corvin's voice cut sharply across the comms. Identify the purpose of this deployment. Commander Mirachin stood on the bridge of the human vessel behind panoramic glass windows, revealing open stars. No armored tactical chamber. No hidden command bunker. An actual window. Vael still could not understand how a military commander felt comfortable exposing herself so openly. Mira answered simply, "You wanted proof humanity is not your enemy." She looked directly toward the Dominion flagship. "So we will show you who the real enemy is." Corvin's eyes narrowed immediately. What does that mean? Before Mira could answer, alarms erupted across the Dominion fleet. Long-range gravitational disturbance detected. Unknown hyperspace rupture forming. Distance? The sensor officer's face drained of color. Inside the system? That was impossible. FTL emergence inside a secured formation violated every known law of hyperspace mechanics. The stars ahead distorted violently. Space folded inward like black water, collapsing into itself. Then something emerged. At first, Vael thought it was debris. Fragments. Broken metallic structures twisting together unnaturally. But then the object moved, not mechanically, organically. A massive construct unfolded itself from hyperspace, its surface constantly shifting like liquid metal wrapped around bone. Thousands of glowing red fractures pulsed across its body like veins. The Dominion bridge went dead silent. No one needed explanations. Every officer felt it instinctively. Predator. Ancient. Wrong. The tactical officer whispered in horror. Silence, vessel confirmed. Several Dominion crew members physically stepped backward from their consoles. Even Fleet Admiral Corvin looked shaken now. The massive alien construct ignored the Dominion warships completely. Its attention locked instantly onto the human vessel. Myra's expression did not change, like she had seen this before. Vael stared at her in disbelief. "You knew it would come." "Of course," she answered quietly. "Every time someone broadcasts enough fear, they listen." The silence vessel accelerated instantly. No warning. No communication. One moment it floated motionless. The next it crossed thousands of kilometers, so fast Dominion targeting systems failed to track it properly. Defensive formations. Corvin roared. 32 Dominion warships reacted instantly with textbook precision. Perfect firing lines formed around the fleet, while heavy weapons unleashed concentrated plasma barges into the approaching construct. The attacks hit directly and did nothing. The red fractures across the alien vessel simply absorbed energy. Not blocked. Absorbed. Vael's stomach turned cold. The silence construct continued advancing untouched, while Dominion formation struggled to reposition. Then it attacked. Not with weapons. With sound. A deep metallic resonance erupted through space itself. Every Dominion ship shuddered violently as internal systems flickered. Officers collapsed across the bridge, screaming and clutching their heads. Vael nearly fell to one knee. The noise bypassed hearing completely. He felt it inside his skull, inside his thoughts. Fear, pure primal terror, flooded through the fleet like infection. Several Dominion ships immediately broke formation despite direct commands. Panic. The silence weaponized panic. Corvin shouted orders desperately while military discipline began collapsing around him, and through all of it, the human ship remained perfectly calm. Vael forced himself to look toward Myra's vessel. No chaos, no screaming, no panic. Human crew members moved steadily through their stations with controlled focus. Some were visibly afraid, but they stayed connected to each other, touching shoulders, speaking calmly, grounding one another. Then Vael noticed something astonishing. Music. Soft music echoed faintly across the human comm channels. Not combat alarms. Not tactical commands. Music. Human officers were using rhythm to stabilize emotional response under psychological attack. The realization stunned him. The humans had not built their civilization around efficiency. They had built it around endurance. Myra's voice returned over the fleet channels. Calm. Steady. Fear isolation. Fear silence. Fear hopelessness. The human vessel accelerated forward directly toward the ancient construct, so we learned never to face the dark alone. Massive sections along the human ship unfolded outward. Not weapons. Gardens. Entire illuminated greenhouse corridors suddenly expanded along the vessel's outer spine, flooding nearby space with warm golden light. Dominion officers stared in confusion. Then the human crew began broadcasting, not military signals. Human voices, laughter, conversations, songs, family recordings. Millions of emotional patterns surged outward from the ship like a living wave. The silence construct slowed. For the first time since emerging, it hesitated. Vael's eyes widened. The human broadcasts were interfering with it. No, hurting it. The red fractures across the alien vessel flickered violently, as if destabilizing. Mira looked toward the terrifying construct with deep sadness. You feed on fear because your creator forgot how to survive anything else. The silenced vessel screamed, this time not metaphorically. An actual mechanical shriek tore across space as its structure destabilized under the flood of human emotional signals. Then the impossible happened. It retreated. The colossal construct folded back into distorted hyperspace and vanished completely. Gone. Just like that. Silence filled the battlefield. Real silence this time. Across the Dominion fleet, officers stared speechlessly at the empty stars. Their perfect military formations had failed completely. And humanity had defeated the nightmare-using community, emotion, memory, and connection. Fleet Admiral Corvin looked physically shaken. Vael slowly turned toward the human ship, glowing warmly in the darkness. And for the first time in his life, he understood why the galaxy feared humanity. Not because humans were stronger, but because humans had found a way to remain human, in a universe designed to break people apart. No one in the Dominion fleet spoke for almost an entire minute. The battlefield remained frozen in stunned silence while the stars slowly stabilized where the silenced vessel had vanished. Fleet Admiral Corvin stood motionless on the bridge of his dreadnought. The old commander looked as though the foundations of reality itself had cracked beneath him, because they had. For thousands of years, every major civilization believed survival depended on suppression, control emotion, limit attachment, reduce individuality, fear weakness. The Dominion built its entire military philosophy around emotional discipline because fear was considered dangerous. But the humans had just weaponized the exact opposite: connection, memory, community, and somehow it worked. Commander Vael stared at the glowing human vessel, drifting peacefully ahead of the fleet. Warm light still shone through its greenhouse corridors, while soft music continued echoing faintly across open channels. It did not look victorious. It looked alive. That distinction suddenly felt important. A trembling voice finally broke the silence on Vael's bridge. The young tactical officer. "Commander," she swallowed hard. Why did the silence retreat? No one answered immediately. Then Mira Chen's voice returned quietly over the comms. Because fear is starvation. Every officer turned toward the transmission instinctively. Mira stood alone now on the observation deck of the human vessel, stars glowing behind her like distant fires. The silence were not born monsters. Her expression darkened slightly. They became empty. Vael frowned. "Explain." Mira looked downward briefly, as though choosing whether humanity should reveal something dangerous. Finally, she answered, "Long before your Dominion existed, there was another civilization." Ancient holographic imagery appeared across fleet displays. Towering cities, machines orbiting entire suns. Civilization on a scale beyond anything the Dominion had ever achieved. The officers stared in disbelief. "They mastered survival," Mira continued. "Disease, hunger, aging, war, eventually even emotion itself." The images shifted. People connected to massive neural systems, artificial consciousness networks, emotion regulators, behavior optimization systems. Everything clean, perfect, controlled. "They believed suffering was the root of conflict," Mira whispered. The once vibrant civilization in the recordings gradually became sterile, empty, silent. No art, no music, no families, only efficiency, only function, only survival. Then the final image appeared. Darkness, worlds without lights, machines drifting endlessly through dead systems. Vael felt cold watching it, because it looked horrifyingly familiar. Not physically, philosophically. The Dominion suddenly seemed far closer to those extinct beings than anyone wanted to admit. Mira continued softly. "They removed fear, but they also removed love, hope, joy, grief, meaning." The holograms faded. Eventually, they forgot why survival mattered. No one moved. No one breathed. The implications hit too hard. "The silence," Vael whispered slowly. Mira nodded. What remained after civilization optimized itself into emptiness? Several Dominion officers looked physically disturbed now, because deep down, they recognized the pattern. The Dominion praised emotional restraint, disciplined isolation, efficient existence. And for the first time in galactic history, someone was forcing them to ask the forbidden question: what if they were slowly becoming the same thing? Fleet Admiral Corvin's voice cut through the silence harshly. "This changes nothing." Every head turned toward him. The Admiral's expression remained rigid, but Vael could hear strain beneath it now. Emotion creates instability. History proves this repeatedly. Rage, fear, attachment. These things cause wars. Mira nodded gently. "Yes." Corvin blinked slightly, caught off guard by the agreement. "Then you admit your philosophy is dangerous." "Of course it is." Her answer came instantly. Human officers behind her exchanged knowing looks. Mira stepped closer to the camera. "Love is dangerous, Admiral." The fleet went silent again. "Attachment is dangerous. Grief is dangerous. Hope is dangerous." Her eyes hardened slightly. But removing them is worse. Those words hit Vael harder than any weapon, because suddenly the entire human civilization made sense. The gardens, the music, the artwork, the families, the laughter during battle. The humans preserved emotion because emotion was what kept people alive against the darkness. Not physically, spiritually. The Dominion survived. Humanity endured. There was a difference. Vael slowly looked around his own bridge. Gray walls, identical workstations, exhausted officers trained never to express weakness. No personal objects, no warmth, no life. For the first time in 300 years of service, his ship felt unbearably cold. A younger officer suddenly spoke hesitantly from the rear station. "Commander." Vael turned toward him. The officer looked nervous, almost embarrassed. "My grandmother used to sing while working." The bridge stared at him in confusion. The young officer swallowed hard. She said old Dominion crews used to eat together after long voyages. They decorated their quarters. They celebrated return days. He lowered his eyes. I thought she was making it up. No one mocked him, because suddenly they all wondered the same thing. What else had the galaxy forgotten? Then another transmission arrived from the human ark. Not military, civilian. Millions of human faces appeared across the fleet, displays simultaneously. Families, children, elderly survivors, artists, farmers, teachers, ordinary people. The humans looked directly into Dominion cameras without fear, and slowly they began singing, softly at first, then louder. An ancient Earth song carried across the void between fleets. Not propaganda, not intimidation. A reminder. Vael watched hardened Dominion officers silently listening to music for the first time in decades. Some looked confused, others emotional. One older navigation officer quietly began crying without understanding why. And somewhere deep inside himself, Commander Vael realized something terrifying. The humans had not defeated the silence. They had resisted becoming it. The recording spread across the galaxy within 48 hours. Despite Fleet Admiral Corvin's direct orders, thousands of Dominion personnel secretly copied the battle footage before military intelligence could contain it. The human songs, the retreat of the silence, the revelation of what the silence truly were. Every classified network failed to stop the leak, because for the first time in centuries, people wanted to feel something. Across Dominion worlds, civilians gathered in silence around public holoscreens, watching the same impossible footage again and again. A human child laughing inside a starship greenhouse. Dominion officers frozen in fear during the silence attack. Then the moment humanity answered terror not with rage, but with connection. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Dominion core world, Vatar Prime. A naval engineer named Relis stood motionless inside a military cafeteria while the footage replayed across suspended news screens overhead. Hundreds of officers sat around him eating in total silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Because nobody could stop staring at the human ships. Not their weapons. Their lives. One younger technician whispered shakily. They were singing during combat. Another officer answered quietly. They weren't trying to suppress fear. Relis looked around the room slowly. Gray walls, identical tables, silent meals consumed as efficiently as possible before returning to duty. Suddenly the entire culture felt unnatural, like everyone had forgotten how to be alive. 3 days later, someone placed a flower beside a navigation console aboard a Dominion cruiser. That single act caused disciplinary hearings across the vessel. The captain demanded to know who violated uniform regulation standards. No one confessed. The next day, there were 5 flowers. A week later, someone painted a tiny constellation symbol inside an engineering corridor. Then music started appearing quietly in crew quarters. Low volume. Hidden. Forbidden. But spreading. The Dominion military tried suppressing it. That only made it grow faster. Meanwhile, the political crisis worsened. Emergency sessions erupted across the Dominion Senate as officials argued openly for the first time in generations. The humans manipulated us emotionally. They saved an entire fleet. They endangered us by provoking the silence. They drove the silence away. They are destabilizing civilization itself. That last accusation frightened Vael most, because it was true. Humanity was destabilizing the galaxy, not through war, through memory. People across known space were beginning to ask dangerous questions. Questions old civilizations had buried long ago. Why are our ships designed like prisons? Why do crews live in isolation? Why are emotional bonds considered weakness? Why does survival feel empty? The cracks spread beyond the Dominion. The Krellian war clans dismiss humanity publicly while secretly ordering psychological studies on human resilience. The Valer technocracy banned all human cultural transmissions after emotional response spikes appeared among civilian populations. Even the isolated Nahari collective, famous for suppressing individual identity entirely, reported rising levels of unauthorized creative expression. The galaxy was changing, and no one knew how to stop it. Commander Vael stood inside his quarters aboard the Dominion scout vessel, staring at the object in his hands. A photograph, printed, physical, ancient. Commander Mirachin had given it to him before the fleet departed orbit. The image showed Earth before its destruction, blue oceans beneath white clouds, small human figures standing together on a beach laughing into ocean wind, families, imperfections, life. Vael had spent 3 centuries believing efficiency was civilization's highest achievement. Now he stared at a simple human photograph like it was forbidden knowledge. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Enter. The door opened cautiously. Lieutenant Sarek stepped inside, then froze. His eyes widened at the sight before him. Vael followed his gaze. A plant, small, green, resting beside the observation window. Silence stretched awkwardly. Finally, Sarek spoke carefully. Commander. Vael raised an eyebrow. Sarek hesitated before asking quietly, Is that decoration authorized? For a moment, Vael said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed, not politely, not strategically. A real laugh. Short, disbelieving, human. Sarek looked utterly shocked, because officers did not laugh like that aboard Dominion ships. Vael walked toward the small plant slowly. I acquired it from the horizon, Arkansas. Sarek stared at the tiny green leaves like they might explode. Why? Vael looked out toward the stars beyond the glass. The answer came before he fully understood it himself. Because this room felt dead. That sentence changed something between them instantly. Not rank, not discipline. Something deeper. Sarek stepped closer to the observation window. After a long silence, he finally admitted quietly, My mother used to paint. Vael turned slightly. She stopped after my father joined the fleet. Another pause. She said military life required focus. The commander looked back toward the stars. Perhaps, Vael murmured softly, that is the problem. Hours later, deep within Dominion High Command, Fleet Admiral Corvin stood before the ruling Defense Council while emergency reports flooded the chamber. Civil unrest increasing, military morale instability, unauthorized cultural gatherings, emotional expression spikes across fleet personnel. One counselor looked furious. This human influence must be contained immediately. Another disagreed sharply. Contained? They save an entire Dominion fleet. They are weakening social cohesion. No, a quieter voice interrupted. Everyone turned. An elderly council member slowly stood from his chair. Very old, nearly forgotten politically. Counselor Theon. He looked around the chamber tiredly. When I was young, he said softly, our ships used to have windows. The room went silent. The old counselor smiled sadly. We removed them because engineers said they served no tactical purpose. No one spoke, because suddenly that felt like the saddest thing anyone had ever said. The first colony went silent 11 days later. No distress signal. No warning. One moment, the Dominion mining world of Arcturus. 9 was transmitting normally. The next, nothing. 12 million citizens vanished into silence. So complete it felt unnatural. The emergency session inside Dominion High Command descended into chaos instantly. Confirmed communications blackout. No debris detected. Orbital defenses inactive. Where's the fleet stationed there? Gone. Fleet Admiral Corvin stood at the center of the command chamber, while panic spread through officers and politicians alike, because everyone knew what this meant. The silence had returned, and this time they had not come for humanity. They had come for the galaxy. Commander Vael watched the incoming reports from a station near the outer chamber wall. Entire systems were beginning to fail simultaneously, not through invasion, through collapse. Ships stopped responding. Colonies lost coordination. Military crews broke psychologically after exposure to silence resonance attacks. Civilizations built entirely around emotional suppression had no defense against existential terror once discipline cracked. The Dominion fleet had optimized itself for order, not despair. One tactical officer whispered shakily, "Our people don't know how to endure fear." Vael immediately thought of the human ships, the music, the gardens, the shared meals, the conversations during battle. Humanity had spent 10,000 years preparing psychologically for the dark between stars. The galaxy had not. Corvin slammed his fist against the command platform. All available fleets move immediately toward Arcturus 9. A younger commander looked horrified. "Sir, the crews are already destabilizing." Multiple ships reported panic episodes after the last encounter. Corvin's face darkened. Then suppress it. Vael finally stepped forward. "That will not work anymore." The chamber went silent. The Admiral slowly turned toward him. "Explain yourself carefully, Commander." Vael met the old commander's eyes directly. "For centuries we trained our people to hide fear instead of surviving it. The silence exploit emotional isolation." Several counselors looked disturbed hearing it spoken aloud. Vael continued, "Our crews break because they face terror alone." Corvin's expression hardened instantly. "So your solution is what? Songs? Gardens? Human sentimentality?" "No," Vael answered quietly. "Humanity." The room erupted immediately. "This is madness. You would restructure military doctrine during active crisis? They are contaminating your judgment." Vael ignored them all, because for the first time in his life, he knew they were wrong. Before the argument could escalate further, alarms screamed throughout the chamber. A new hyperspace rupture opened directly above Dominion Prime. Huge, far larger than the previous silence construct. Every display screen darkened simultaneously. Then the stars themselves disappeared. The massive object emerging from hyperspace blocked out half the orbital sky. People across the capital world began screaming as cities fell into shadow. The silence had arrived at the heart of the Dominion, and this construct was not merely a ship. It looked like an entire civilization fused together into something dead. Fragments of cities, broken moons, ancient wreckage melted into one colossal entity larger than most stations. Red fractures pulsed across its surface like infected veins. Then the resonance attack began. Every living being on Dominion Prime felt it instantly. Fear, isolation, hopelessness. Across the command chamber, officers collapsed to their knees, clutching their heads. Some screamed. Others simply froze entirely as psychological paralysis spread. Vael nearly fell himself. The sensation dragged every hidden terror to the surface simultaneously. Failure, loss, meaninglessness. He realized suddenly that was the true weapon of the silence. Not destruction. Emptiness. The belief that nothing mattered. Then music echoed softly through the chamber. Human music. Warm. Steady. Vael looked up in confusion. Every display screen across Dominion Prime suddenly activated. Human transmissions. The Horizon Arc had entered the system. Massive human vessels emerged behind it in glowing waves of hyperspace light. Not war formations. Communities. Thousands of civilian ships traveled alongside military escorts. Windows illuminated warmly across every hull. Music, voices, laughter, and conversations flooded communication channels throughout the system. Humanity had not arrived as a fleet. Humanity had arrived as people. Commander Mirachin appeared across emergency broadcasts. Her voice calm despite the apocalypse unfolding around her. Listen to each other. Dominion citizens stare at the screens in confusion. Talk. Sing. Stay together. Fear grows in silence. The human ships moved directly toward the colossal silence construct, and this time the Dominion watched carefully. Not one human vessel traveled alone. Every formation remained interconnected through open communication channels. Families spoke across networks. Crews shared stories. Songs spread from ship to ship like emotional lifelines binding the fleet together. The silence attacked again. The resonance wave slammed into the human armada and shattered harmlessly against millions of connected minds refusing isolation. The effect was immediate. The silence construct began destabilizing violently. Red fractures spread across its enormous body as human emotional broadcasts flooded surrounding space. Memories, art, music, love, grief, hope, everything the ancient enemy had abandoned. The colossal construct screamed, not electronically, emotionally, like something ancient and starving finally confronting what it lost long ago. Then something impossible happened. The silence did not attack. It hesitated. Across a giant fractured surface, millions of tiny lights flickered weakly beneath the corruption. Vael's eyes widened slowly. They're still alive. Myra's face darkened with sadness. Part of them always was. The realization hit the entire command chamber at once. The silence were not invaders. They were survivors of civilization that abandoned its humanity so completely it became trapped inside endless emptiness. And now humanity was confronting them with the one thing they could not consume: connection. The human fleet intensified its transmissions. Children laughing, families speaking, people sharing memories of Earth, gardens, rain, ocean waves, simple pieces of life. The giant construct trembled violently. Then, slowly, the red fractures dimmed. For the first time in countless ages, warm light emerged beneath the monstrous surface. The silence construct began breaking apart peacefully, not exploding, releasing. Massive corrupted sections drifted away into darkness, while smaller illuminated structures emerged beneath the nightmare exterior, like buried ruins finally seeing sunlight. Entire Dominion fleets watched in stunned silence. Humanity was not destroying the enemy. Humanity was reminding them what they used to be. And somehow, that was stronger than war. 3 years later, the galaxy no longer resembled the civilization Commander Vael once served. The changes began slowly. A window installed aboard a Dominion cruiser. A communal dining hall added to a military station. Music permitted during long-range patrols. Then came gardens, art, personal quarters, open recreational spaces. At first, the old admirals protested furiously. They called it weakness, distraction, human contamination. But the results became impossible to deny. Crew fatigue dropped dramatically. Psychological collapse during deep space missions nearly vanished. Military performance improved across every measurable category. But the deeper changes could not be measured by numbers. People started talking again, not as officers, not as workers, as living beings. Dominion vessels once known for a perfect silence slowly filled with conversation and laughter. Officers who once had emotional strain behind rigid discipline began supporting each other openly. Ships stopped feeling like prisons. They began feeling alive. Commander Vael stood quietly inside the observation garden of the Dominion flagship Renewal and watched children run beneath artificial sunlight. Children, a sight once considered dangerously inefficient aboard military vessels. Now entire family districts existed on long-range exploration ships. A small boy paused near Vael's bench, staring curiously at the stars beyond the transparent dome. "Commander?" Vael looked down gently. "Yes." The child pointed toward the darkness outside. "Is it true humans used to have oceans?" Vael smiled faintly. "Yes." "Real ones?" "Yes." The boy thought about this seriously, then grinned. "I want to see one someday." Vael felt something warm settle quietly in his chest. Hope, a feeling Dominion doctrine once considered strategically irrelevant. Now it was shaping the future. Behind him, soft footsteps approached through the garden paths. Admiral Mirachin sat beside him beneath the glow of artificial trees, while distant stars drifted slowly beyond the dome. For a while neither spoke. They simply listened, Birdsong echoed softly through hidden speakers. Water flowed nearby through a small stream crossing the garden floor. Life. Vael finally broke the silence. When I first encountered humanity, I believed your people were irrational. Mira smiled slightly. You were correct. Vael almost laughed. Perhaps. He looked upward toward the stars. Everything we built was designed to survive fear, but somewhere along the way, survival became all we knew. Myra's expression softened. That happens to civilizations that spend too long in darkness. Far beyond the observation dome, massive fleets drifted together near the edge of known space. Human ships, Dominion vessels, Krellian carriers, Valar science cruisers, dozens of civilizations traveling together toward unexplored stars. And every ship looked different now. Some carried murals. Others displayed family symbols or poems painted proudly across their hulls. Observation decks glowed warmly beside weapon systems. Gardens existed alongside engine cores. For the first time in galactic history, starships looked like homes. Vael watched the fleet carefully. Years ago, such individuality would have horrified military command. Now it inspired loyalty stronger than fear ever could. Do you know what frightens me most? Vael asked quietly. Mira glanced toward him. The silence. He shook his head slowly. No. His eyes remained fixed on the stars. That we almost became them willingly. Mira said nothing for a long moment. Then finally, most civilizations do. The answer carried no judgment, only sadness. Because humanity understood something the galaxy never had. People could survive terrible things. War, loss, isolation, even extinction. But the moment they stopped caring about beauty, connection, and each other, they became truly lost. A soft chime echoed gently through the garden. Fleet-wide evening signal. Across thousands of ships, lights dimmed gradually as crews gathered for shared meals, conversations, music, and rest. Simple things. Human things. Vael remembered the cold silence of old Dominion vessels, the empty corridors, the identical gray walls, the efficient loneliness. Now those same ships contain gardens, libraries, theaters, classrooms, and laughter, not because humanity conquered the galaxy, but because humanity reminded the galaxy what survival was supposed to mean. Far in the distance, beyond explored space, faint lights shimmered near the edge of darkness. New stars waiting to be discovered. New futures waiting to be built. Mira stood slowly beside the observation glass. The universe is still dangerous, she said softly. Vael joined her at the window. Yes, fear will never disappear. No, Vael agreed. For a while they stood in silence, watching the combined fleet prepare for departure into the unknown. Then Mira smiled faintly. But now, she whispered, at least nobody has to face the dark alone. And across the endless sea of stars, thousands of ships carrying millions of lives moved forward together, not as machines built merely to survive, but as homes carrying humanity itself into the future.